She was little once, small in stature, with a mighty soul. She danced, twirled and jumped, swung and sang. There was fire in her eyes. She wore no shoes on her feet. Golden hair shimmered as she swayed. The sun rays kissed her freckled cheeks. A soft summer breeze wrapped all around her, tickling her skin, enveloping her. She cherished Mother Nature's sweet embrace, for she knew no other. Wrapped in its infinite hum, she found solace. She read books meant for much older people, played piano by ear, also guitar, sang songs about blue skies and black birds, and at 4 o'clock every day after his work, she climbed up onto her father's knee, shared a sandwich from his lunchbox, smelled his oily, smoky daddy smell. He read to her from the paper, like familiar old friends. The words jumped out at her. She knew them and spoke their name out loud excitedly, as if to greet them. Her mummy rolled her eyes and shushed her chatterbox mouth. Her father said nothing. She snuck her bag full of books and old annuals, only 3 years old, spoke words she shouldn't know, but somehow did. She used words so eloquently, so confidently, conversed with adults, preferably, debating and challenging the unjust nonsense they spouted to their children. Questions, questions, questions. Always questions, seeking more information, offering unwanted opinions, a perpetual quest for details, explanations, justifications. There was no Google then, no Alexa, no technological oracle with a bottomless well of wisdom to draw from. The girl was most often shoved away in annoyance, immediately shushed by her mother to be quiet, because she sounded not right in her head. She told them anyway. Do you know rivers on maps, circulatory systems in the biology books at school, leaves, dragonfly wings, tree branches, roots, fish fins, veins on Granny's hands, tiny ripples on the sand as the tide went out. All the same, she would explain. Why are we made all the same? Her mother shut her away in her den, under the stairs, in the dark. Her father said nothing, did nothing, but later snuck her a torch and a bag full of books called encyclopedias. They were heavy. They hummed strongly, and the hum felt, tasted, smelled strange, like copper and rot, like death had touched them. Books about every single thing ever, even books about how Mother Nature made the weather. The girl would ask her books questions and spoke out loud to them, thanking them for their help, arranging them carefully, offering hours of rapacious ritual for fear of angering them if their placement was not exact. I don't want my books to get angry. The girl got promptly shushed. You're not right. Why do you always do this? Refusing to bow down and accept blame and punishment for crimes that were never hers, pointing out where things went wrong, foretelling where things would eventually go wrong. She saw patterns everywhere. They made her tummy lurch and her head spin when her opinions came true. Effusively, the girl exclaimed, "See? See?" Only to be left with deep black and blue reminders of her defiance and disrespect, dappling her tiny body. Her joints burned and ached, skin burning fiercely, the old taste of 2 pence on her tongue. She refused to cower. She refused to comply. She refused to confess. Her steadfast determination to mask her pain, her deadpan face, pale as ivory, wide accusatory eyes locked on her attacker, never wavering, and with fearless courage she gazed deep into the abyss, and the abyss gazed back at her, hateful, spiteful, accusing. Stripping back the layers of pain, purple, painful, stepping stones, mapping the frenzied journey of a mother's rage, and in the early hours her mother would wake her, and whilst in a haze of half-sleep and not quiet, her mother would cry noisily, that same way, woo, 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 a banshee's cry. She would say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, over and over and over. The girl, bewildered, heart aching, herself splitting, core cracking in confusion, would pat and rub her mother's back and tell her she was a good mummy, not a bad mummy. As her mother hugged her, she felt long nails rake her back and dig into her shoulder. The girl smiled contently, for pain was all she knew of human love, thinking all mothers must all love this way. She accepted it eagerly. She was only 4, only on earth 4 summers, 4 winters, 48 moons old, only 4, with a lion's heart and a lion's roar. She walked around like she owned the whole world, fearless, courageous, tempestuous, a tsunami of emotions, and she captivated hearts, rooms. All who saw her smiled a little wider. Her gift of laughter, she lit up the room, and people remarked upon how beautiful she was, inside and out. If only you could bottle her, you'd make a fortune. With her gentle green-blue eyes, ever-changing, multifaceted orbs of purity, honesty, loyalty, respect. She exuded unconditional love, yet there were no friends around her to bless her life in the playful way that friends do. Small, usual flecks of amber dotted within. She gazed into your very soul, weighed you up, sussed you out. Triage, red, amber, green. She always hit the nail right on the head. She saw the future, predicted which way cars would turn, guessing how the dice would fall, giggling, guessing shapes. What card was then? She saw patterns flash in her mind, like an architect unfolding intricately designed blueprints and complex maps of stars and planets, galaxies far, far beyond what was already known. In restless daydreams, she saw hum vibrating within auras. She saw strands of time entwined like rope, so close together, each invisible to the other, each playing out the same scenario. Hundreds of me's, hundreds of you's, hundreds of them's. Lightning quick, quicker than her heartbeat, twice as quick. Mother would find her in the garden, laid on her back, 1,000-yard stare, mouth agape, a silent scream, hands splayed, locked in place, eyes wide and unblinking, flickering ever so slightly, as information engulfed her mind. Too much, too much. She felt everything. She felt nothing. Far, far away. She knew. She always knew. She knew when the rain would come. She knew when the ewes would drop their lambs. Worked alongside the shepherds during the lambing time, day or night, wind, rain, snow. She knelt down in the hay to lay a little hand on swollen bellies, feeling the hum of new life inside, knowing when, knowing sadly when not. She knew in her heart when spring was here. She knew when people were sad or in pain or poorly. She could smell poorly, like plastic burning, sweet, acrid. She knew jealousy. She knew resentment. She knew of death, had felt its hum, and found it to be most patient, gentle, fair, compassionate, very kind. The girl did not understand why humans feared him so and avoided him at all cost. Many, many times she hoped that death would take her. As the hungry monsters fell upon her, feasting greedily upon her childhood, consuming her, afterwards she lay alone, used up, cast aside, raw, bloody, sticky with shame. She would summon death with a silent scream. It heard her call its name, but would only linger on the threshold of her bedroom door. Shadows gathered in the corners. She knew death wanted her, yet it hesitated, whispering, "Not yet, child, not yet." As if her secret routines and rituals, repeated for hours, kept him at bay like it did the Shadow Man. The girl heard him knock politely at first. 3 taps, 7 seconds. 3 taps, 7 seconds. 3 taps, 7 seconds. Then a claw in a soundless frenzy at her bedroom door, opening for hours, spitting and frothing with rage as her invisible barrier held fast. A desperate attempt to build a force field, some place of safety, a fortress of protection around what was left of her. "You were just dreaming." Her father said it softly, yet he gave her a tiny little radio to put under her pillow at night that smelled funny, and nailed a special horseshoe above her bedroom door, and it helped. She often knew when people were dying, and would tell them, "Don't be scared. It's okay. It really is okay. You'll feel so much better. You won't feel sad. You won't miss anyone or worry." She knew the silent suffering of others. She would sing for them her nightingale song, her soft, shimmering hair, long like spun gold, do silly things that made them laugh, and, swathed in shadows, wrapped within the illusion of trust, biding their time, patient, oh, so very, very patient, stalking delicious prey, they drank her in, bathed in her light, and wanted more. All that was beautiful in her world fell away, and the real monsters came to play. They came first with gentle hands, played games, made no demands. Then gentle hands became rough and sore, turned a beautiful soul to a broken whore. And she knew, like she always knew, that her mother, lips curled in a rictus grin, eyes narrowed, had invited them in, and sat like a queen on her throne, looking down from afar, from her front row seat, was complicit in her eventual and complete obliteration. As the autumn leaves fell without a sound, her hopes, her dreams, her soul, her very self, fell with them. Shards of her still littered the ground. A winter invaded the land, ground icy, unyielding, unforgiving, hard, cold. She felt her heart hardening, cracking, breaking, and she welcomed the rough hands, welcomed the pain it caused through the fibers of her being. If her pain was audible, it would sound like a badly played violin, carving shards from her very soul. Fragile fragments littered her mind as it cut her into pieces. The girl invited it, embraced it, accepted it. All she was, all she had been, all she might ever be, was shrouded in gray mists, tied tight with ribbons of red pain, and stored away in the deepest, furthest recesses of her core. And new Bevs came, each their own, each with purpose to protect at all cost, even if the cost was great, as sadly it often was. Protect the core, gather up, sweep and scoop the shattered shards of what remains, and try over and over to build a person that might feel and live and love. Decades later, a broken old woman with the eyes of a young girl sat in a mental health facility, awaiting trauma processing therapy. The shadows in her mind held sway in anticipation, licking its lips, gnashing its teeth, hungry for the delicious taste of pain. And, long forgotten by the girl, in the furthest recesses of her mind, was the very epitome of Pandora's box. In a leather-bound book named Suffering, her childhood sat, waiting. The house was a small, two-story affair, with white siding on the bottom floor and gray shingles on the top. 3 windows were facing the street, a large picture window, a small rectangular one above that, and another large window below it. I got out of my car and walked towards the door, knocking twice before it opened. A woman stood there, wearing a blue dress with her hair tied back in a bun. She had bright green eyes that seemed to sparkle when she saw me standing outside her house. "Hello," she said cheerfully. Her voice was soft, but carried well through the night air. "Hi, are you Miss Tanner?" She nodded. "Yes, I am." She smiled again and stepped aside so I could enter the house. It smelled odd inside. Not bad or anything like that, just strange, like old books and dust. "Please come in." I entered her living room. It wasn't much more than a couch and a coffee table, an end table with a lamp on it. That's all I really needed for a place to sleep. The walls were painted yellow, which looked nice against the dark furniture. The carpet was black and covered most of the hardwood floors. There was a small kitchen off to the side of the living room with a sink, a stove, and a fridge. Everything was clean and tidy. "Sorry for the mess," she said, while pointing to some boxes stacked in the corner. "My husband died last year, and I just haven't had the time to get around to moving everything yet." "No problem. I don't mind sleeping in a bit of mess." She chuckled. "Well, if you want to put your things away, feel free. Just make sure not to take too long, since I have to leave in a few hours." "Okay, thank you." "You're welcome. I'll be right back." She disappeared down a hallway. As I looked around the room, I noticed something else odd about the house. The walls weren't straight. They bulged outward here and there like they'd been pushed from the inside out by someone, pushing their way through them. It was subtle enough that it didn't bother me at first, but as I looked closer, I realized that it wasn't just the walls. Every single surface in the entire house had these little imperfections, including the ceiling and the floor. I heard footsteps coming down the hall and turned to see Miss Tanner returning with 2 glasses filled with water. She handed me one and took a seat on the couch across from me. "So, what brings you out this way?" she asked as she sipped her drink. "I'm looking for a friend of mine. He went missing in the area about a month ago." "Oh, that's dreadful. What happened?" "He just vanished." I paused as I thought about how to explain. "He was staying in an abandoned hotel nearby and never came back. We think he might have gotten lost in the woods." She shook her head sadly. "That's awful. Is there any chance he survived? Maybe ran away somewhere?" "I don't know. I hope so." She sighed heavily and leaned back on the couch. "I'm sorry. I wish I could help you find him." We sat quietly for a few moments before she spoke up again. "I don't mean to pry, but are you sure he isn't still alive? Maybe he's hiding somewhere or something." "Well, maybe," I said hesitantly. "Do you have any idea where he might have gone?" "I'm not sure, but I have a hunch." She laughed softly and shook her head. "Well, let me know if you hear anything about him. I'll keep my ears open as well." "Thanks. I better get some sleep now," I said, standing up from the couch. "Of course. I'll show you to your room." I downed the glass of water and placed it on the table. Even that seemed crooked. "Thanks again for letting me stay here." "You're more than welcome. Please feel free to use anything in the kitchen if you need anything." "I will." I followed her down the hallway to a staircase leading to the second floor. At the top of those stairs was another hallway that led to 3 doors, one on each side and one at the end. She pointed to the door on the left. "That one's yours. No one else is staying this weekend, so other doors will be locked." She opened the door to my room and flicked a light switch. There was a dresser opposite the bed with a window above it, and a small bed with a nightstand next to it. The wall behind the bed was covered in posters of famous horror movies, slasher flicks mostly. "This should be all set up for you." She motioned towards the bed. "Make yourself comfortable. My room is on the 3rd floor if you need anything." "Thank you. I'll keep that in mind." She walked over to the door at the end of the hall and closed it behind her before disappearing into her own room. I took a look around my room before lying down on the bed. The sheets were clean and smelled nice, but I couldn't tell whether they'd been washed recently or not. As I got under them, I noticed something strange about them. They felt heavy, like they were weighted down on one side. When I tried to lift them up, they wouldn't budge. I rolled over on my back and pulled at them, but still no give. Something was definitely wrong with this place. I lay there staring at the ceiling for a while before drifting off into a deep but restless sleep. I woke up sometime later to a knocking on the other side of my door. I sat up and rubbed my eyes before standing up from the bed. "Who is it?" I called out, walking over to the door. There was no answer. I unlocked the door and cracked it open. It was dark outside, but the moon was bright enough that I could see everything clearly. I stepped out into the hallway and saw nothing except darkness. "Hello?" I called again, but once again there was no response. "Is someone there?" I asked as I turned around slowly. I heard another knock from behind me, and spun around only to catch sight of Miss Tanner standing in the doorway to her room. Her hair had fallen loose from her bun and hung down past her shoulders. She was wearing a white tank top and blue pajama pants with red stripes down them. She looked like she was trying to hide herself by covering her face with her hands, which were pressed against her cheeks. "Miss Tanner?" She didn't say anything, continuing to stare at me with wide eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked as I approached her. She nodded, but kept her head down. What's happened?" I asked as I reached out to touch her shoulder. She flinched away from my hand and backed up until she hit the wall behind her. Then, without saying a word, she ran down the hallway and disappeared into the shadows. I stood there for several seconds, dumbfounded by what had happened. What the hell had I just witnessed? Was it real? Or was it just one of those dreams or hallucinations brought on by stress or exhaustion? I went back inside my room and locked the door behind me. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and checked the time. It was after midnight. I'd been asleep for hours. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the poster of Friday the 13th hanging on the wall above the desk. Why would Miss Tanner act like that? And why would she try to hide from me when I touched her? It made no sense. I sighed heavily and laid back down on the bed. I wanted to go back to sleep, but I knew I couldn't fall asleep now. Not until I figured out what was going on here. Maybe if I waited long enough, she'd come back out and explain herself. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because suddenly I was shaken awake by someone pounding on the door. "Wake up!" I jumped up from the bed and opened the door to find Miss Tanner standing in front of me, with her hands balled into fists at her side. "What's wrong?" "Get dressed. You have to leave right now," she said frantically as she began to pace back and forth. "Why?" "You don't know how dangerous this place is. Get your things and get out, now." "What are you talking about?" She stopped pacing and looked me dead in the eye. "The house is cursed." "What?" "It's haunted. There are spirits in this house." I laughed nervously and shook my head. "There aren't any ghosts here." "Then what do you call that thing you saw earlier tonight?" "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied. Was she talking about herself? "I'm not leaving until I get some answers." "Please, just go. If you stay here much longer, something bad will happen to you, just like your friend." "My friend?" "Just go," she yelled. She started running downstairs. "Wait," I shouted after her, but it was too late. She was already halfway up the steps before she turned around and glared at me. "Tell me what happened." "He died," she said simply. "How?" "They got him." "Who?" "The monsters." I blinked at her and tried to process what she was telling me. "Monsters?" "Yes, the monsters. They came through the walls and they took him away." "Are you insane?" I screamed at her. "There's no such thing as ghosts or monsters." She frowned at me and shook her head. "There are more things than just that." Then she pointed to the floor below us. "You need to leave right now before they come for you next." "I can't leave. My friend might be here somewhere. He could still be alive." She let out a frustrated sigh and walked over to the window. She pushed aside the curtains and looked outside. The moon was bright enough that I could see everything clearly. I followed her gaze out the window and saw nothing except for darkness. She pulled open the window and leaned out into the night air. "He's leaving," she called out into the darkness. I heard a low growl coming from what sounded like inside the walls. Miss Tanner slowly backed away from the window. Then, without warning, she fell backwards onto the ground. Her body hit the floor with a sickening crunch and didn't move again. I stood there, staring at Miss Tanner's broken form lying on the floor for several seconds, before turning around and sprinting down the stairs. The whole house began to creak and moan, and it appeared as if the walls were closing in on me. I ran past the kitchen and the living room, both of which appeared to be untouched, and headed towards the front door. The only light came from the moon shining through the windows of the hallway. As I approached the exit, I felt something grab hold of my shoulder and pull me back. I spun around quickly to see a figure standing in the shadows behind me. It was tall and thin, with oily skin and long black hair. Its face was covered by a mask made of human bones. I struggled against its grip, but couldn't break free. The walls looked as if they were melting, and more human bone-masked faces were emerging from all around me, surrounding me on all sides and closing in on me until I couldn't breathe. I reached out to touch one of them, but only grabbed hold of empty air. Then suddenly, I was dragged back through the walls, felt myself descending into that pitch-black abyss beneath me. I woke up gasping for breath and sat right up in bed. My heart was racing and my body was soaked with sweat. There was a loud bang on the door and I jumped out of bed. I unlocked the door and opened it slightly, just enough to see who was knocking. But when I did, I wasn't surprised to see Mrs. Tanner standing there with her hands balled into fists at her side. "Get dressed. You have to leave right now." Have you ever met a serial killer? I think I did, and I'm relieved that I didn't know it at the time. I used to chat a lot on MSN Messenger when I was in college. I was a shy and kind of nerdy girl, so talking and flirting with random guys was much easier when it was online instead of in the real world. We used to have a lot of internet stores that you could go and pay a couple of bucks and use the computer a couple times a week. I mean, it was the early 2000s, and technology wasn't available to everyone just yet. Sometimes it was just writing, and sometimes we'd use the cameras. There was this one guy that I remember really well. He was a lawyer, or so he said. He always refused to use the camera, even after we'd known each other for about a year. He was witty and funny, and I really liked him. He was a little bit older than me, and he was pretty good at sex talk, which was somehow appealing to a girl in her late teens. He was always asking personal questions. Where do you live? Do you live alone? Do you live with your family? Do you have a boyfriend? Can you travel alone? Of course, I always diluted the conversation and never gave him any information. Sometimes I would tell him a fake story, but then he would ask details, and I would end up telling him that it was fake and laughing about it. You would think it would bother him, but it didn't. He would always laugh and say it was just my wild imagination. I think our virtual relationship lasted for about 3 years. Now that I'm thinking about it, it lasted until I graduated college. One time he came to town where I was living. I was in my senior year. He said it was for work and insisted that we meet up. I agreed and told him about a coffee place where I like to drink coffee. He declined and said he had to work all day and that he'd be available after 9 p.m. and proposed that we meet in the apartment where he was staying. I thought it was weird, but at the same time I was excited and eager to meet him in real life. I finally agreed and told myself I'll just pass by and say hello and that'll be that. We agreed to meet the following day. He sent me the address, and because I know the area, I knew I would find my way easily. Unfortunately, that day at university, we had to prepare for a conference, me and a group of friends. The meeting took us longer than I'd planned, so I sent a message to the guy telling him that I had an unexpected bit of work to finish and I couldn't make it. He never responded, and I never heard from him again. A few years passed, and I moved to another city where I was pursuing a PhD. One day, out of nowhere, I received a mail from this guy. It was just a regular mail, where he was asking how I was doing and what I'd been up to lately. Honestly, I was a little bit surprised. We exchanged a few emails after that, and he told me he'd be happy to meet up if I was able to make time for him. That made me laugh. I thought, well, maybe it's time to finally meet this guy. Where I was living happened to be an hour away from the city he was living in. After a few back and forths and some more emails, he gave me the address. The location struck me as odd, but I didn't really think about it at the time. It was a bit out of the way, in a city I had visited a few times before. It was a new neighborhood. I didn't even think people were living there yet. The way I was supposed to get to his house was a bit weird too. He said he would guide me on the phone and tell me how to get to his place. I took the train anyway, arriving at the station, and took a cab as I headed towards his neighborhood. I had to stop at an intersection and follow his instructions on the phone as he said. When the cab arrived at the intersection, the driver asked me if I was sure where I was going. I lied and told him this was the right area. I was surrounded by suburb villas, the kind with high walls and well-maintained front trees. It was a bit unnerving as I walked on the street where he said he lived. It was quiet. Too quiet. At the end of the street there was a dozen duplexes with well-maintained hedges instead of fences. The street was empty but for 2 cars that passed by before I took a turn into an alleyway. I called him and he took me from there. I followed his instructions until I stopped in front of a duplex with a garage and a well-maintained front lawn. There was no car outside, and all the windows seemed to be closed but on the upper floors. A space in front of the garage was unexpectedly clean, and for a moment I thought maybe I had missed the right house. That's when I heard him say on the phone, "I can see you. Come on ahead inside." Then I looked up and saw the curtain dropping. I felt a real sense of unease, but I ignored it. "Come on, don't be silly. I know this guy for almost 6 years. I'll finally get to meet him in person," I said to myself. I stepped towards the front door, pushed it when I came inside. It was the entrance to the duplex, leading up to a small lobby with stairs. The lobby was completely quiet, as if no one else lived here. I was about to close the door when, for some reason, I decided not to close it and just push it quietly. I went upstairs and saw number 11 on the door on the right. Before I could tap on the woody door, he opened it wildly. The inside of the apartment was kind of dark because of the lack of natural light. He stood there, wearing a black shirt and gray pants and bare feet, which was odd. He was partially bald and neatly shaved. He smiled and stuck his hand out for me to shake. "Well, hello there. You finally decided to do it, huh?" Something in his features was unsettling, as if he was up to something. It was as if I could see in his cold gray eyes something I couldn't explain that made me feel in danger. I reached out my hand to greet him. The moment his hand touched mine, a chill ran down my spine. "Yeah, finally," I responded out of politeness. My uneasiness must have shown on my face. He shook my hand, but he didn't let go of it, and his grip tightened. "I don't like it. I don't like this at all." "You can let go of my hand now," I said, with false amusement. He grinned, but he didn't let go. At that instant, I went into fight-or-flight mode. My heart started racing, and all my senses went crazy. He grabbed my hand and tried to pull me inside. I threw politeness out the window and yelled, "Let go of me! I said let go!" I was standing on the threshold. I gripped the wall with my left hand and tried to pull away from him. When I looked up, I saw the creepy expression of a predator and a smile that said, "I finally got you." I was not only trapped, but I also knew that no one would hear me outside the duplex. Even if someone could hear me, they'd have no idea where the screams were coming from. He wasn't a big guy. He was around my height and maybe a little overweight. Otherwise, he was able to easily overwhelm me. So I took my chance and let go of the wall and stepped inside. It caught him off guard, and I grabbed the doorknob with my left hand and began to slam the door repeatedly on his arm as he tried to walk me inside. He finally let go of my hand, and I heard a grunt as he fell over inside. I thanked God for my decision to leave the front door open. I ran through the quiet alleyway without looking back until I reached the intersection. I looked behind me, but I saw no one, so I continued running. I couldn't find any cabs in the area, so I ran nearly 10 minutes before spotting a cab. While running after him, I yelled the taxi down and waved my hands. He must have seen me in his rearview mirror because he came to a complete stop. I dashed to the cab, shaking uncontrollably as I got inside. The driver gave me a wide look and was about to ask me a question when I blurted out, "To the train station. Please, hurry." He gave me a brief look before resuming the drive. I arrived at the station, purchased the ticket, and then boarded the first train to my hometown. I switched off my phone because I was afraid that he would call or message me. When I arrived, I went to the train station convenience store and pretended to look for something. I knew they'd have cameras there, so if he followed me, I'll be caught on camera. I spent nearly 10 minutes wandering between the aisles. Finally, I went up to the cashier and bought a bottle of water. On my way home, I took 2 cabs in opposite directions to confuse anyone that was following me. I didn't feel safe until I got home and shut the door. For a brief moment, I considered calling the police, but what would I say to them? He didn't do anything. I hadn't been harmed, and I'm an adult who understands what I was doing. I cursed my stupid lack of self-preservation. I told no one about this misadventure and vowed never to go through another dangerous situation like this again. I never heard from the guy after that, but it took several months for me to completely forget about the encounter and move on with my life. Until this morning, that is, when I was reading the newspaper and noticed a familiar face, a face I'd never forget. The photo was titled MSN Predator, the serial killer who lured his victims to his home and never let them leave. According to the article, all 24 victims were young women between the ages of 17 and 23, whom the killer met on Messenger. During the interrogation, the defendant stated that some of his victims had been chatting with him for more than 2 years, and only one girl had slipped between his fingers twice, as he put it, because she was somehow smarter than the others. I don't have much time, so if things sound a little weird, just bear with me. This is a warning. If you see black clouds at all, just run. Doesn't matter where you are. I don't know if this thing is spreading. I'm getting ahead of myself. On April 5th, my wife and I took off for a wedding in Vermont. Before we left, we heard the news talk about a big northeastern storm that's going to drop a bunch of snow and ice. Even though it looks like we're going to be okay since our plane is landing technically in New Hampshire, just south of the storm. The flight was 2 hours, but about halfway through the trip, the clouds started to change color. Not gray like you'd expect. Darker, more like black, looking more like volcanic ash clouds than normal storm clouds. My wife was busy playing her Nintendo Switch, but since I was laid off, I had a lot on my mind. I was a little surprised that nobody else noticed it, but off in the distance, I could have sworn I saw something move in the distance. It was hard to tell. It sort of looks like a wing swooping through the clouds, like a fish that makes 180s at the surface. The pressure wake pushed the clouds outward, like something was coming and then changed its mind. It had to be a trick of the eye, probably. It had to be the sun hitting and reflecting away off the ash clouds. I shouldn't have been assuming they were ash clouds, but time proved me right. The pilot never made any announcement, and I didn't really see anything either, so I kept my mouth shut. Maybe if I hadn't, things would have turned out different for Courtney. When I looked away, I happened to catch one of the flight attendants staring at her, her head slightly tilted, and she wouldn't take her eyes off of me. It sounds strange, but it felt like she was waiting to see if I was about to tell my wife what I had seen. I decided to keep looking busy and even decided to shut my eyes for a few minutes. Thinking she had just seen something might distract the old veteran stewardess's attention. It had to be about 10 minutes because I listened to my favorite song twice and another song before opening my eyes. And to my shock, she was still looking at me. Now, her teeth looked different, like she was trying hard to smile. I swear it looked like her gums were bleeding. I decided to get up and go to the bathroom, the one farthest from her. That must have done the trick, because when I came back, she had moved on to her normal duties of serving passengers. When I got back, my wife finally noticed the black clouds, but by this time we could barely see past the wing. Did the pilots see anything? Not wanting to worry her, I assured her they have all kinds of communications and radar. Even if they can't see in front of them, they know where they're going. She gave me a look. Courtney was like that. She could see right through me like an MRI machine. The fasten seatbelt sign came on, and with it, the pilot's voice. "Attention travelers, we'll be making our final descent momentarily. Please make sure all loose items are stored, as you won't be needing them." What's that mean? That was weird. I looked around, and thankfully, someone else, who I would shortly find out was our air marshal for the flight, stood up and headed for the cockpit, his face a mask of concern. He shut the drapes behind him, so no one could see him. I heard him knocking loudly and asking to be let in. Just then, the stewardess from earlier rushed by me, running against my arm. Suddenly, my arm was in drastic pain. I looked down, and it looked like someone had taken a cheese grater to it. My wife looked to try and help me. "Oh, God, are you okay? What happened?" I told her I wasn't sure and started pressing dirty paper towels and Skittles wrappers on my wound to stop the bleeding. My wife yelped for help. Other people started looking, and in the confusion, nobody else saw the air marshal struggling, except me, as he was pulled into the bathroom by the stewardess. Except she now looked more like a demon, with black scales on the forearms of her lethal hands and sharp claws. There was panic on the man's face, or maybe it was pain. I don't know. Just as the door shut, I could see the man's skin turning red as if it were being burned off by a torch, or whatever that thing pretending to be a stewardess was. Before I could tell anyone to look, the air marshal disappeared into the airplane bathroom. By this time, my wife had noticed my face and looked up front, but she didn't see anything. "Are you okay?" I tried to tell her something. It took the air marshal, but she just looked at me in confusion. And that was when the gunshot rang out in the cabin. The bullets began flying out of the bathroom from where the air marshal had been dragged. His screams were guttural. He must have gotten loose, but he never made it out. More bullets went off, and everyone scattered. Several shots hit the cockpit, and luckily they didn't penetrate the bulletproof door. Unfortunately, one of the bullets did shoot out the pressurized windows. The next few minutes were a blur. Everyone was panicking, and with no direction, everyone braced for the inevitable. I looked out the window just as we were about to hit. We were through the clouds, and what I was seeing wasn't New Hampshire. It looked like some kind of hellscape. Lava rivers and large mounds in the distance, horned monstrosities roaming the outskirts of the airport, the barbed wire fencing that lay more like fences made from rubber or skin, and the buildings were covered in ash and strange demonic symbols. After that, it was only blackness. I came to eventually, hanging and nearly falling out of my seat. I appeared to be only a few feet off the ground, and I was alone. My wife's seat was broken clean off. I can't see her, and I don't see anyone else living. I prepared myself and unlatched the seatbelt. I tucked and managed to save my 33-year-old ankles when I hit the ground. I stood up, letting my bearings hit me, when I finally got to look around and noticed there was no sun. It should have been there. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it looks like midnight out there. Alone and scared, I tried calling out, but I was afraid to draw the attention of those giant monsters I'd seen just before the crash. Just then, I heard a girl screaming. Instinct kicked in, and I ran to help. I jumped over the debris and body parts from the passengers. All I could think was that it might be Courtney, and I had to do something. I rounded one of the plane engines that was on fire, and I wish I didn't see what I had witnessed next. An early 20s Gen Z girl covered in dirt, her face cut and badly bleeding. So bad I couldn't tell if she still had her eyes. But then the worst of it finally hit me when I realized what she was doing. She was feeling for her legs, or her lack thereof. She cried out, screaming for her mother, while she grabbed at the stumps of what had been her legs. I have to admit I was scared. I was in shock. How could I help her? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't let her suffer alone. I took a step when suddenly I heard another woman, but this one wasn't screaming. She was laughing. Suddenly, a beautiful, terrifying demon woman walked around the corner, and with her came 2 tiny, crawling demons. "Oh, my child, save your screams. We're just getting started." With that, she snapped her fingers, and I watched as the demons tore into the poor girl. Her screams drew more of the demon dogs. "The more you despair, the more you will suffer. Embrace the suffering, and you will be released from it." The girl cried as best she could as the monster tore into her throat, but with one last breath, she must have gave her what the demon wanted. Suddenly, they were surrounded in black smoke and disappeared. The demon dogs, the demon woman, and the girl, all gone. I was left alone among the debris, the death, the ash-filled air. I didn't know what to do. I found a place to hide. I thought this was hell. Found out later, it wasn't. After having a breakdown under the debris of the crashed plane and still having no idea if my wife was even alive, I had this weird feeling that I had to keep going. It just kept saying, keep alive, keep moving. I can hear those demon dogs coming. I need to be fast. Sometime after my encounter, I heard something loud and deep. It was familiar somehow, though. It sounded like an engine, a plane. I ran through piles of debris and burning cars, planes, cruise ships, and buses. I got to the top of the debris mound just in time to see a 747 punch through the clouded barrier. This one landed just like it was supposed to. I looked up and noticed flying demons scattering as the plane hooked the terminal gate. Just then, the hundreds of demons surrounding the tarmac shrieked like they were welcoming something. Just then, from a shadowy hole in the ground, a giant snake erupted. The giant snake-like creature slithered around the plane like a boa constrictor, preparing to suffocate its prey. The doors opened, and immediately I could hear people screaming for their lives. I watched as a humanoid demon dressed like a pilot in a torn uniform, with random horns tearing its suit of skin off. It was like it was wearing a costume. It started throwing passengers off the plane. Demon dogs and other emaciated humanoid demon things began to swarm the passengers. A middle-aged man in a $5,000 suit, he screamed as the creatures tore his clothes off and he was carried into the main terminal. He swung his suitcase like a weapon. Just before he disappeared, one of the smallest humanoid demons jumped up and bit down on his wrist, stopping him from injuring any of the rest of them with that metal suitcase. I could hear him scream even louder, begging for help and to be let go. Before he vanished into the terminal, I saw the little demon tear the guy's hand off. Was that where they took Courtney, I wondered? I navigated my way inside. I don't know why. I put myself through these sights of something in me just kept demanding that I move forward. Like I had to see it. I watched as all the passengers from the plane, buses, the people who had just got lost on car rides ended up here. They were sorted onto paths that were surrounded by barbed wire. Come on, you meat sacks, it's time to get sorted out. Which one of you is one of us, and which one of you is for the meat grinder? One of the sick-looking demons with a sharp pike yelled at these poor souls, shuffling them through the giant rotating spikes, just like TSA instructing passengers to go through security. Demon guards pushed each person towards the front of the line, where a larger demon would look at each person to classify them. Aviation, infantry, necrotics, this one has spirit. Training pits, we'll beat that out of you, or we'll eat you. The guy looked like a soldier type. Broad shoulders, tattoos, looked like someone from a movie, with the army guys in Benghazi. One by one, people were chosen for roles in Hell's forces. As far as I can tell, there was a small percent of prisoners that the demons didn't want anything to do with, which I thought was pretty weird. Wouldn't everyone make a good soldier? I never got my answer. One of the flying demons landed near the ventilation duct I was hiding in, and I needed to sneak away. I made my way through the vents. To my relief, nothing was in there with me. At least nothing that ever found me. Eventually, I found my way to the airport authority office. It looked guarded. Several bear-type looking guys and big old demons that guarded the door. Using the vents, I quietly snuck in and found what appeared to be a map with some demon casting a spell over the airport. On the giant omnidirectional map, I could see a bubble around the airport. At first I thought it was hiding this place. Whatever that thing in the airport authority office is, it's how they're cloaking the airport, and the demons are building an army with our own people. I don't know how, but somehow in this office I have signal. Maybe it's how no one knows this place is gone. I don't know. I don't know anything up until an hour ago. I didn't even believe in hell. If anyone gets this message, you need to tell everyone about this demon cloaking this place. If it's something more than turning people into demons, I don't know, but we have to save these people. Every plane that lands is either adding more soldiers to the enemy ranks or enslaving more innocent souls. The worst part is, the planes are leaving. Who's on them? I don't know, but they can't be human. I'm going to keep exploring. I can't explain this feeling, but something is telling me that Courtney's not far. I'm going to find out as much as I can and come back here to relay what I can. This has to be the start of something. Nothing is normal. I'll not be fine. Not anymore. Everything feels tawdry and cheap. No matter what kind of meaning or purpose I think my life used to have, well, that's all gone now. Reverberated away like a beautiful song sung into the wind. It can only travel so far before it dims into nothing. This is my life now. I'm on the cusp of accepting it. It's only a matter of time until I'm all used up. With my new purpose fulfilled, I'll move on. The cycle will continue. Whatever it's done with me, I'll be like one of them. Just one more of them. That's the only part I can't accept. No matter my denial, I know it's inevitable. I grew up wanting to be a singer, to create something temporary and beautiful with little more than a breath and a piece of my soul merged into it. It was my dream. I wanted to be able to move people with the sound of my words, to make them feel genuine emotion by vibrating my vocal cords in a manner that brought feeling, whether it was joy, elation, intrigue,
even sadness. I grew up listening to the great opera performers and envying their talent, their dedication, to convey so much feeling. It's as if they're feeling that emotion themselves, completely and fully, so fully that it overflows out and infects those within earshot, causing them to feel as well. I don't envy them anymore. Since my run-in with the worms, I now have that gift, except the things I infect with my audience are sinister. I can only express what the worms feel. You don't want to feel what the worms feel. They say that due to the way their nervous system is developed, or rather lack of developed, worms can't actually feel anything. They're annelids, possessing no brain, with a single nerve cord running through the length of their body. Scientists think that because of this, they can't feel pain. They can't think. Their primitive anatomy would have them believe that they're mindless little decomposers, their only purpose to consume and convert old dead things into nutrient-rich waste. Little organic fertilizer machines. I wonder how those same scientists would feel if they could see what I had, if they could hear me sing the worms' song. They would feel how everybody else feels when they hear it. It cannot be put into words. For worms, they don't have any words, but the effect of it is undeniable. To dissect the feeling and pick it apart would be an exercise in futility, a lesson of hubris. The results would be irrelevant. Thinking back to that day, I wonder what my life would be if I had never stumbled into that hole. If my friends had never invited me hiking at the base of that gargantuan mountain, or had I made up excuses as to why I couldn't go, my life might be different, might be normal. Had I never decided to stray from the well-beaten path and fallen into that hole, I might have been able to fulfill my dream of becoming an opera singer eventually on my own, not with the creature's perpetual curse infecting my larynx, coiling its way around my trachea. Had I never went to investigate that gorgeous siren song that, in truth, was a swan song, I may have lived a life full of life experiences, and instead of cursed half-life I'm now burdened with. The worm's head worming its way up my epiglottis like a charmed cobra every time I sing. Had I not screamed when I was face to face with those half-rotten corpses, surrounded and wedged into the bottom of that chasm by the petrified remains, then perhaps one of them wouldn't have slithered its way down my throat so easily. All the cadavers' mouths hung open as the demon worms sang their beautiful and deadly chorus from what was left of their hosts, their heads poking through the open throats of rotten flesh. Had I not chickened out of ending my own life once my new parasite made its intentions known, maybe the worm's tendrils wouldn't be worming their way deeper and deeper into my brain right now. My dream of becoming famous is now my nightmare, because I know once I'm on that stage, hundreds of eyes and ears on me, the worm will sing her misbegotten song. Chaos will erupt. Maybe not at first, perhaps not for a long time, but once the notes go into their ears, then eventually they will belong to the worms. It takes time for a flower to bloom, just like it takes time for a corpse to decompose. But once it starts, there's really no stopping the process. The children of the worms gestate, being born from the mere sound alone. The seed is planted, the egg is laid. When they finally hatch, they will feed on the various blood and cerebrospinal fluids that they need until they mature, at which time they begin controlling their gracious host. Little things at first. They have to learn how to walk before they can run, after all. It may start with the twitching of a limb, the spasm of a muscle. Once they further develop, simple spasms and twitches become more refined, the kicking of a small animal, the slapping of a coworker. When they're closing in on the end of their life cycle, they have full control, the murder of a friend, the mutilation of a loved one. When they're nearing the end, having lived a full and productive life, they find somewhere secluded, usually somewhere isolated, but with a great chance of being heard. Their siblings, who were all born from the same song, or what's left of them, began to congregate, usually in clusters of about a dozen. With their help, they began digging a hole. It's deep, just wide enough to accommodate the cluster of their host bodies, with room for one unsuspecting victim in the middle. The shaft, oddly acoustic in its properties. They crawl in and they wait. They wait while their hosts slowly decompose. They wait to be taught how to sing. They wait for Mother to come and teach them. With their mother's dying song, they learn. Only one at a time will get to go on and continue with their own life cycle, to infect another host so it too can sing for the world. I know all of this because the worm wants me to know. It wants me to understand, in hopes that with understanding would come some sense of the grand purpose, to know that my death won't be in vain. I've been under the control of the worm for some time now, and have become an observer of my own life. The mother worm, the one that sings to create its children, doesn't start out in the brain like its kids do, and doesn't indulge in violence. It nests in the esophagus of its hosts, and with time grows little tendrils that invade the sinus cavities, eventually making its way to the brain. Because of this, it takes longer to reach its final stage of life, and therefore longer to take full control of its host. There are still brief periods where I resume control, and I write this during one of those, snippets of clarity that grow shorter and shorter every time. Before the worm had any control, after I was rescued from that god-awful pit, I found that my singing voice had improved exponentially. I could hit vocal ranges that I never dreamed I'd be able to master, much less even accomplish successfully. My voice was sublime, utter perfection. I used my newfound skills to seize my dream of getting leading role after leading role, my fame and accolades growing with each performance. As my fame grew, so too did the influence of the worm, branching deeper and deeper. This evening's performance will be televised, and I plead with you, do not view it. The worm almost has complete control, and tonight's performance will be the inseminating one. Never has a worm gotten to sing its impregnating song to such a large audience, and I fear all of the chaos and murder it will cause down the line. I want to kill myself, to end it all, but the worm has enough control over me now, even in my brief waking spells, to stop me every single time. I need to hurry. I can feel it waking again. If, by some miracle, the worm doesn't find and delete this, please, for the love of everything I hold dear, don't listen to my voice. It's not really me. It's the requiem of the worm.